All right, here we are. It's chapter 7. I hope you enjoyed the midterm. I'll be grading that this weekend and next week, so hopefully we'll get that back to you right away. So chapter 7 is about listening. And if you think about how important listening is in the whole communication process, there are people that are good speakers, there are people that are good readers, there are people that are good writers, and there are people that are good listeners. But there's no connection between how well people think they listen and how competently they really are as listeners. So listening is so important. 55% of college students' communication time is spent listening. In Zoom, all your Zoom classes and in these little YouTube things and stuff, you guys are probably even listening more than that now. Listening topped family social list of, and as well as career list of things that are important. So listening defined, at least for interpersonal type, is the process of receiving and responding to others' messages. Now we've kind of broadened this to include all messages, including mediated channels, some of which are involved in the written word also. There's a difference between hearing and listening. Hearing is the process in which sound waves strike the eardrum and cause vibrations and that are transmitted to the brain. Listening occurs when the brain reconstructs these and gives them meaning. Barring illness, injury, or cotton plugs, you can't stop hearing. Your brain picks up sound waves and transmits them to your ears pick up sound waves, transmits them to your brain, whether you want to or not. Listening, however, isn't automatic. Many times we hear, but we don't listen. Sometimes we automatically and unconsciously block out irritating sounds. People say, I heard you. Yeah, but did they listen to you? Next time your kid, when you yell at your kid, it's like, did you hear me? And they'll say, yeah, I heard you. Then say, did you listen? Because they'll look at you and go, no, I didn't. Because we know that there are different processes. So there's mindful listening and mindful listening. Mindless listening occurs when we react to other messages automatically and routinely. It's just very superficial. Now, it may sound negative, but it's a very valuable part of communication because it frees us to focus our minds on messages that require more careful attention. When you think about all the messages that we receive, it's impractical to listen carefully and thoughtfully 100% of the time. Mindful listening involves giving careful and thoughtful attention and responses to the messages we receive. You tend to listen mindfully when the message is important to you and also when the person talking is important to you. Now, not everybody has the same listening style, and there's different ways to listen. There's task-oriented listening, which is most concerned with the efficiency and accomplishing the job at hand. There's relational listening, which is more concerned with building emotional closeness with others. There's analytical listening, where we're concerned about attending to the full measure before coming to judgment. There's critical listening, where you have a strong desire to evaluate the message. All those are different types of listening. Now, there are challenges to listening because listening is not easy. The first challenge is information overload. You guys listen to so much. You wake up in the morning and you're on TikTok, and then you turn your computer on, and then you hear from your friend or spouse or mom or whatever kind of thing like that. Just this whole amount of stuff, it's impossible for us to keep our attention totally focused for so long. You also have personal concerns. Sometimes you don't listen carefully because you're wrapped up in your own personal concerns that are on your mind. Another reason you don't listen well is rapid thought. We're capable of understanding speech rates up to 600 words per minute, but most people talk between 100 and 140. So we've got a lot of spare time in our brain, and you're not paying attention because it's like, yeah, I know what they're going to say. Noise is also another problem. Our physical and mental world often present distractions that make it hard for us to listen. Also, if we're tired, that's another form that's going to make us not listen well. Then all receivers do not receive the same message. If I would canvass you guys and say, okay, so what have you heard so far? Nobody would be able to tell me exactly the same thing. You guys all hear different things, pick different things. We have poor listening habits. One is a pseudo-listener. And that's a student. Basically, you kind of sit there, you shake your head, you're nodding, but in your brain it's like, oh, is he ever going to shut up? Really, what time is this class going to end? Do you think he's going to really go for half an hour? Oh, what if this one's an hour? I've got so much to do, right? That's a pseudo-listening, but they got a nice smile on their face and they're looking at you and stuff. There are stage hoggers. These people are interested in only expressing their own ideas and they don't care about what anyone else has to say. They allow a person to speak from time to time, but only so they can catch your breath. And then they use your remarks as a basis for their own babbling. There's selective listening, where people respond only to parts of what a speaker says, and they reject everything else. And you only usually listen to the bad part. People fill in the gaps. They like to think of what they remember makes the whole story. And sometimes people manufacture information, so when they retell the story that they've listened to, they're kind of giving a different story than really what happened. There are insulated listeners, and those are people that when they hear something that they don't want to hear about, they just avoid it. When the topic arises, they either don't pay attention or they pretend they don't even hear it. There's the generation gap, which is defensive listening, where you can make an innocent comment and people take it as a personal attack. And then there's ambushing, and these people listen carefully to what you say only because they're trying to get information to attack what you said. So components of listening. The first part of it is the hearing portion of it. And hearing is the physiological aspect of listening. It's the non-selective process of sound waves going to the eardrum. Hearing is obviously vital to listening because it's a starting point in the process. But it can be a problem because your ears can get tired. If you're in a place that's loud, like a bar or something, you don't hear as well. So after you've heard something, you have to attend to it. And that's the psychological part of it. So if I told you, it's like, okay, this next thing is on the final, all of a sudden you're paying attention better, right? Because it's important to you. You attend to it. Because we're so bombarded with information that you can't attend to everything. We'd go crazy if we did. So then after that, paying attention, even if you're paying close attention, you have to understand. And understanding is composed of several elements. First, you must be aware of the syntactic and grammatical rules of the language. You know, beyond your basic ability, understanding measures depends on several other factors. One is your knowledge about the source of the message and the context also. And then you have to remember, and that's a function of several factors. A number of times the information we hear or repeated, how much information there is to store in the brain and whether the information may be rehearsed or not. Early research on listening reveals that people remember only about half of what they hear immediately after hearing it. And then you respond. All these steps we've discussed so far, the hearing, the attending, the understanding, and remembering, are internal activities. The final part of listening is the responding, giving a message, giving observable feedback to the speaker. So one of the big differences between effective and ineffective listening is the kind of feedback offered. Good listeners show that they are attended by nonverbal behaviors such as keeping eye contact, reacting with appropriate facial expressions, not being on the phone, right? You know, if you've got a slump posture or you're bored or yawning and stuff, that's a clear message that you're really not paying attention. So different types of listening responses. There's a whole spectrum of listening responses. Some more reflective and less directive, some less reflective and more directive. The first on one side is silent listening, then there's questioning, paraphrasing, empathizing, supporting, analyzing, evaluating, and advising. Silent listening, you use that one because there's some times where the best response to listening is not to say anything. You know, especially if you don't want to encourage the speaker to keep talking. Silent listening is staying attentive and non-verbally responsive without offering any verbal feedback. Questioning is another type. And there are several reasons to question, and some of them are very sincere. One is to clarify the meaning. You know, sometimes you don't quite understand. So it's like, what do you mean when he was unfair? Or to learn about others' thoughts, feelings, or wants. You know, you can use open-ended questions. that allow a variety of extended responses or closed ones, right? Like, so how did you feel? That's an open-ended question. Or if you say, did you feel angry? That's closed because they're just going to say yes or no. You can also use it to encourage elaboration. Sometimes people aren't telling you enough, so you need to know more. Or to encourage discovery. You know, people in the helping profession, clergy, counselors, therapists and stuff, they often ask questions to prod their clients into discovering solutions for their problems. And then sometimes you use it to gather more facts and details. But not all questions are sincere. Sometimes there are counterfeit questions that are a disguised attempt to send a message, not receive one. So sometimes a question that traps the speaker, like, you didn't like that movie, did you? No. I mean, that's the appropriate response kind of thing, right? Because you're kind of backed in the corner. Anytime there's a did you or isn't that right? Or a question that makes a statement. Are you finally off the phone? Well, you can see the phone's not connected to their ear and they don't have a voice piece or anything like that. So you know they're off the phone, but that finally is just kind of telling you that you were on the phone too long. Or questions that carry a hidden agenda. Are you busy Friday night? Why? Are you going out drinking? I'm not busy. You need help moving? I'm busy. Okay? Or questions that seek a correct answer. You know, which shoes do you think I should wear? Or questions based on unchecked assumptions. Why aren't you listening to me? Or what's the matter? You can also paraphrase, and that's feedback that restates in your own words the message you thought the speaker had sent. Listeners rephrase rather than repeat the message. So you're saying what you think they're saying in your own words. There's empathizing, and that's the response style that listeners use when they want to show that they identify with the speaker. And then there's supporting. And these are times when people want to hear more than the reflection about how they feel. They need some support. So you can agree with them, yeah, that's right, that class was really hard. Or you can offer to help, yeah, I'm here for you. Anytime, let me know. Or praise them, yeah, I don't care what the boss says, I think you did a great job. Or reassurance, yeah, the worst part seems to be over, it's probably gonna be easier. Or even a diversion, you know, let's catch a movie and get your mind off of this. And then there's analyzing. And in analyzing a situation, the listener often offers an interpretation of the speaker's message. I think what might be bothering you is, or maybe the problem started. Interpretations are often effective in helping people who have problems seeing alternative meanings in a situation that they never thought of without your assistance. And then there's also evaluating. In evaluating responses, appraises the sender's thoughts or behaviors in some way. The evaluation can be favorable, like that's a good idea, or you should really do that. Or it can be unfavorable. Boy, with an attitude like that, you're not going to get anywhere, right? But it implies that the person evaluating is in some way qualified to pass judgment on the speaker's thoughts or actions. And then there's advising, and that's a very common reaction. You know, when a person needs an advice, several times you kind of need to make sure they need it or they want it. Because first of all, you have to make sure that what you're offering is the best suggestion. You know, how do you know that? You know, is your advice really needed? If the person's already done something, giving them advice now isn't worth it. Is your advice wanted? Sometimes they just want to talk to you. They don't want your advice. You know, is the advice given in the right sequence? And is the advice coming from the expert? What makes you an expert on this? So which style should you use? There's no simple answer to that. All response styles have a potential to help others to accept their situation, feel better, and have a sense of control over their problem. Remember, some people come to you because you're their ego booster. You know, they just need a hug. They need that good ear. They need you to say, boy, they're doing a great job, kind of thing like that. Sometimes they come to you because you're their ego buster. You know, they need your advice or they need you to help them think of another way around this or a different side. But listening is so important and we don't really think about it often. We just automatically do it. So let's listen better. Have a good one.